It's been 20 years since Kobe Bryant scored 81 points in the game. Since then, we have seen NBA offenses continue to explode due to the benefits of spacing with the rise of the three-point shot and the changes to officiating that cater towards offensive players. However, even with all that, no one had ever eclipsed 81 points in the game until now. Imagine you had no access to the internet and missed an entire week of NBA basketball. And before you get internet back, I told you that someone just surpassed Kobe's 81 points. Who would be your first guess? Probably Luka first, then you might guess Steph Curry, Donovan Mitchell, Giannis, Anthony Edwards. You get the point. The list goes on and on. You know, super prolific scorers who have exploded for 60 plus points in the past. How many guesses do you think it would take you before you said Bam Adebayo? Probably at least 50, maybe 60. In fact, you might say Cam Thomas before you got to Bam. In maybe the most unexpected performance of all time, we saw Bam Adebayo drop 83 points. Yes, 83 points. I still can't believe what I'm saying, but with a performance like this, you would expect this to be celebrated across the league. This is the type of event that stays in the headlines for weeks as the media, the fans, and the players continue to praise the spectacle that we just witnessed. However, this doesn't seem to be the reception. In fact, I don't think I've ever seen so many mixed opinions on what is supposed to be such a legendary performance. And I believe there are many reasons for this. But first, let's address the obvious. 43 free throw attempts. Now, this is absolutely insane. He not just set the record for the most free throw attempts in the game, but he shattered the record for the most free throws made in a game with 36. The previous record was 28, set by Wilt Chamberlain in his 100-point game. 13.5% of all the free throws Bam has attempted this season came from just this one game. Guys, we are in March. That is just unheard of. NBA fans these days are much more sensitive to free throws than they were in the past, and when you shoot that much, there's going to be a wave of negativity. Similar to how there's always a wave of negativity when discussing Harden, Embiid, and SGA because of the amount of free throws they were shooting. The other big elephant in the room was the fourth quarter. I mean, just as a pure basketball fan, it was kind of atrocious. Bam came in the fourth quarter with 62 points on efficient shooting. However, in the fourth quarter, he started just jacking up too many threes, a couple of which he airballed. On top of that, he started to just toss up shots at the rim, and with the slightest form of contact got rewarded with some free throws. Now, don't get me wrong, Bam was getting fouled throughout a lot of this game, but I've watched a million NBA games and some of these fouls are not getting called when the game is this far out of reach. Referees usually ease up by this point. However, the last couple of minutes are probably what has divided people the most, because during this part of the game, we saw the Heat intentionally fouling the Wizards so that they could quickly get the ball back and let Bam score. Wizards players were fouling Heat players that were not Bam so that Bam couldn't score. Then you had the Heat intentionally miss free throws with the hopes that they could get the offensive rebound and give the ball back to Bam to score. At one point, the Wizards legit started playing 1v5 to prevent Bam from scoring. All of these shenanigans in the last few minutes of a blowout game is what is rubbing people the wrong way. I've also heard many people say that Wilt did the same thing in his 100-point game, which makes this entire conversation around Bam feel hypocritical in a way. But since no one has actually seen Wilt's 100-point game, it can't really be analyzed to this degree. But there's also another thing. When you looked at the top of the single game scoring list, you used to see Wilt, then Kobe, two absolute icons and legends of the game. Now when you look at the list, you will see Wilt, then Bam, then Kobe. Obviously Bam stands out here as the odd one out since he is not an all-time great like the others. And a lot of basketball fans seem to have a problem with that as they feel like history has been ruined. I also think we as fans have become a little desensitized to scoring. Offenses these days are so efficient and players are so skilled that scoring just seems too easy from the eye test. I mean, in the last 3 years alone, we have seen 5 different players score 70 plus. Before 2023, there had only been 5 different players score at least 70 in the entire history of the NBA, dating back to 1946. I also think with the rise of social media, we are in an era where people want to hate on everything. I remember when Booker scored 70, which was the first time anyone had done so since Kobe's 81. People hated on that because he still ended up losing, and his game also had some questionable shenanigans at the end, similar to Bam's game. When Donovan Mitchell scored 71, people talked about it for like a day and then moved on. A month later, yes, a month later, Damian Lillard scored 71, and people were dismissing it in a way because they felt the NBA was just too easy, considering we just had a 71-point game from Mitchell just a month ago. When Embiid scored 70 in 2024, people were hating on it because he did it on a rookie, even though that same rookie, who was, by the way, Victor Wembanyama, finished second for Defensive Player of the Year and was first team All-Defense that year. And literally 4 days later, Luka scored 73 against the Hawks in what is the most efficient 70-point game in NBA history, and probably the most impressive 70-point game we have ever seen when you factor in how close that game was and how efficient Luka was. I remember after that game, a lot of the talk was centered around how bad the Hawks defense was, instead of celebrating the greatness of Luka's performance. Still to this day, I will never understand how dismissive the media was of that performance. If you started watching basketball the last 2 seasons, I bet you wouldn't even know that Luka scored 73 in a game. So yes, Bam's performance was not as efficient as you would expect. Yes, the man shot 43 free throws, and yes, the last few minutes were ugly to watch. But 83 points is still 83 points. And regardless if any NBA player, the players on their team, and their coach try their hardest to get them the ball to score, they still most likely won't hit 83 points. And we know this because almost every high-scoring performance of this magnitude, the player is shot hunting and his team and coaches are aware of it as well. And even then, we have still only seen a player cross 80 points 3 times. Now, could Kobe have scored more than 81 when he had 62 in 3 quarters against Dallas? Possibly. Could Klay have scored more than 81 when he had 60 points on 11 dribbles in 3 quarters? Possibly. Are there a multitude of other NBA players that could have scored 60 plus but had the misfortune of being taken out of the game by their coach? Possibly to that as well. And while that does irk me a little as I think about all the 80 plus performances we maybe could have had if coaches didn't take out their star players, I don't really have a problem with Bam's performance other than the fouling situation at the end. Yes, his coach left him in the game, but you can't blame Bam for that. Every single player who has ever had this type of performance would stay in the game if it were up to them. And every single player who has had this type of night has shot hunted to a degree. So instead of hating on Bam's performance, let's just appreciate something for a change. And when the next guy scores 80 plus, because it will happen again, let's just appreciate that too. And don't lie. Everyone watching this video knows that if you were in Bam's shoes, you would have done the same thing too. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and comment down below how you feel about Bam's performance. Until next time, see y'all later.